You're in the middle of a conversation right now. Someone is talking to you, maybe laughing, maybe asking how you've been, and you're responding, smiling, nodding at the right moments. But somewhere deep inside, there's a version of you just watching, like you're sitting in the back row of a movie theater, and the film playing on screen is your own life. You can see yourself speaking, you can hear your own voice, but it doesn't quite feel like you doing it. Here's what's disturbing. Most people who experience this think something is deeply, fundamentally wrong with them, like they're losing their mind, like they're broken in some way that can't be explained. But psychologists have a name for this, a clinical name, and it affects up to 75% of people at least once in their lifetime. You are not losing your mind. Your mind is actually trying to protect you. The question is, from what? If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own life, like you're performing instead of living, you are not broken. There is a precise, documented psychological reason this happens. And by the end of this video, you'll understand it in a way that might genuinely change how you see yourself. Welcome to Psychology Explained, where we uncover the hidden patterns behind why you think, feel, and behave the way you do. Let's go deep. Imagine you're a nature photographer. You're behind the lens watching a beautiful scene unfold. You see everything clearly. You're present, but you're not in the scene, you're observing it. That's exactly what your brain does during what psychologists call depersonalization. Depersonalization is when you feel detached from your own thoughts, feelings, body, or actions, like you're an outside observer of your own life. And its close twin is derealization. That's when the world around you feels unreal, foggy, like a stage set that someone built to look like your life but isn't quite right. Here's what blows most people's minds when they first hear this. This is not a personality flaw. It's not a sign of madness. It's a neurological defense mechanism. Think of it like a circuit breaker. When emotional pain, stress, or overwhelm gets too intense, your brain flips a switch. It creates psychological distance between you and the experience that's hurting you. Just like a possum plays dead when a predator is too close, your mind detaches when reality feels too heavy to fully inhabit. The glass wall isn't a malfunction. It was built by your own brain to keep you safe, and the part of you that feels distant is the part of you that survived. Now let me ask you something uncomfortable. When you're around certain people, do you ever catch yourself performing the version of you they expect to see? Not lying, not faking exactly, but curating, adjusting, monitoring every word before it leaves your mouth. And then later, alone, you feel strangely exhausted, like you just finished a long shift at a job you didn't sign up for. There's a psychological concept for this called self-monitoring behavior, first studied by psychologist Mark Snyder in 1974. High self-monitors constantly observe and adjust their own behavior based on social cues. They are always watching themselves, but here's where it gets even deeper. When self-monitoring combines with something called the observing ego, a part of your mind that psychoanalysts describe as the watcher within, the distance between you and your experience becomes a permanent background hum. You stop just living moments. You start narrating them. You laugh and immediately notice yourself laughing. You say something and instantly replay it for an invisible audience. It's mentally exhausting in a way that's almost impossible to explain to someone who doesn't feel it. But here's what I want you to hear right now. The fact that you notice yourself this closely, that hyper-awareness, it didn't come from nowhere. It was learned, usually in an environment where you had to stay alert, where being yourself felt somehow unsafe. You didn't become a performer for attention. You became one for survival. Now here's something most people never connect. That feeling of watching yourself from the outside, it doesn't just happen randomly. It follows a pattern. And that pattern almost always traces back to one thing: attachment. The way you learn to connect with people early in your life, or the way you learned that connecting wasn't always safe, quietly shapes how present you're able to feel in your own body today. Psychologists call this attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby, and what it tells us is profound. When a child grows up in an environment that feels emotionally unpredictable, a parent who is sometimes warm and sometimes cold, a home that sometimes feels safe and sometimes doesn't, that child's nervous system learns a very specific lesson. Stay alert, watch everything, don't fully settle in, because settling in means you might get caught off guard, and so the brain develops a habit of hovering, of never fully landing inside an experience, of always keeping one eye on the exit. You carry that habit into adulthood and suddenly, you're 23 years old sitting at a birthday party that's supposed to be fun, and you're floating above it, watching yourself exist in it, wondering why you can't just be normal and enjoy the moment like everyone else seems to. But here's the truth they don't tell you. You're not failing at being present. You're succeeding at a survival strategy your younger self desperately needed. The problem is, you don't need it the same way anymore, and your brain hasn't gotten the memo yet. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside your brain when this occurs. Because this is where it gets fascinating. When depersonalization kicks in, research shows that your brain's emotional center, the amygdala, actually goes quiet. It dials down. And your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part, becomes hyperactive. In simple terms, your feelings get muted and your analytical mind takes over completely. You don't stop experiencing the moment. You start dissecting it instead. It's like your brain switches from feeling mode to observation mode in a fraction of a second. And here's the animal analogy that makes this click instantly. Have you ever watched a deer freeze completely still when it senses danger? It doesn't run, it doesn't fight, it just stops. Becomes almost invisible to itself. That freeze response is ancient. It lives in you too. And depersonalization is your mind's version of going invisible, not from the world, but from your own pain. But here is what nobody talks about. This same pattern, this observer mode, is also found in some of the most creative, deeply feeling, emotionally intelligent people on the planet. Writers who describe their own grief with terrifying accuracy. Artists who paint emotions they can barely speak out loud. People who understand others on a level that feels almost psychic. Because when you spend years watching yourself and the world around you from a slight distance, you develop an extraordinary sensitivity to human experience. You notice what others miss. You feel what others skim past. Your detachment was never emptiness. It was actually a form of depth that most people never develop. Now the final piece, the part that brings everything together. If you feel like you're watching your life instead of living it, the path back isn't to force yourself to feel more. It isn't to push through the glass wall with willpower. That actually makes it worse. The path back is something called grounding, and psychologists who specialize in dissociation agree on this. Grounding works by re-engaging your five senses in small, deliberate ways. The cold of a glass in your hand, the specific sound of rain against a window, the exact texture of a surface under your fingers. These tiny sensory anchors send a direct signal to your nervous system. They say, you are here, this is real, you are safe enough to land. It's not a dramatic fix. It's a quiet, daily practice of coming home to yourself, one small sensation at a time. And here's the most important thing I want to leave with you today. The fact that you found this video, the fact that something in these words made you stop and think, yes, that's exactly it, that is not an accident. People who experience this feeling are almost always people who feel things very deeply, who think in ways that go beyond the surface, who carry more than they ever show. You were never broken. You were just protecting something worth protecting. So here's what I want you to do right now. In the comments below, just type one number. Type 1 if you sometimes feel like you're watching your life from the outside. Type 2 if you feel it mostly around certain people. Type 3 if it happens so often it feels like your default state. No explanation needed, just your number, because I want to know how many of you are actually living inside this experience right now. And if this video made you feel even slightly more understood, subscribe. Because this channel exists for exactly the kind of person who watches a psychology video at whatever time it is right now and thinks, finally, someone gets it. One last thing before you go. The feeling we talked about today, that detachment, that hovering, that quiet distance from your own life, it often shows up strongest in one very specific type of relationship. And in the next video, we're going to talk about why certain people make you feel more like yourself than anyone else ever has, and why losing them feels like losing a part of your own identity. It's not just love, it's something far more psychological than that, and it will change the way you understand every close relationship you've ever had. That video drops very soon. And trust me, you're going to want to be here for it.